There are many different Christianities, many different gospels around, even in the first century, even in Paul's own lifetime. Not that many, but yeah. Well, yeah, if you look at Paul in Galatians, he complains about how easily the Galatians are going after another gospel, which is very different from the one he preached. So there were sincere Christian evangelists.
In that sense doesn't mean another.
Who he calls super apostles.
In that context, it's not talking about another gospel. It's another.
Galatians chapter 1.
I know what you mean. I know the person.
So it is other gospels.
Talking about another. You know what gospel means? Yes.
Do you know what it means?
Doesn't it mean another? It means good news. So I'm going after another good news. Yeah. Another story that isn't the story of Jesus.
That's right. There were sincere Christians around. In Paul's time, Paul mentions them, who he calls super apostles, who were preaching a very different gospel than Paul's own gospel. Now, where did they say that Paul got his gospels from? Where did Paul say he got his gospel from? He boasts in Galatians, he didn't get it from the apostles who actually met with Jesus, lived with Jesus, seen Jesus 3 years. Paul never met Jesus. He got it from a vision, which he calls in Acts 27 a vision. It's not my word, Paul's word, from heaven. So Paul has a vision from heaven. He boasts it's not from any human authority at all. The apostles have heard the gospel that Jesus preached from Jesus himself.
Yeah.
Are they the two same? Are they two the same gospel?
You're talking about when Jesus appeared to Paul?
Yeah.
In Acts? Yeah, they seem. That's what the claim is.
Many people thought that what Paul had was a vision that wasn't from God because it contradicted key elements in Jesus' own teaching.
What did it contradict?
Good. About the law. Jesus said that the law he hadn't come to abolish the law. That the food laws and all the laws, the 600 commandments of the law, have not been abolished. Paul says the law had been cancelled, abolished. Ephesians chapter 2 verse 15 says the law is abolished. Jesus said, "I'm not come to abolish the law." And people like the head of the church, James, look it up. Look at Ephesians 2:15. And we'll compare that with Matthew 5:17, which is Jesus' own teaching on the law. And we'll see if they're the same, different, opposite, whatever you think.
Ephesians 2:15?
Yeah. The issue is about the law. Did you know
verse or the area?
2:15.
Sorry, 2. That's what you said.
Chapter 2, verse 15. Got it. We're going to read it out, what Paul says about the law.
For he himself is our peace, who has made the two one and has destroyed the barrier, the dividing wall of hostility, by abolishing in his flesh the law and its commandments and regulations. His purpose was to create in himself one new man out of the two, thus making peace.
The two what? So, according to Paul, what had happened to the law?
He took the law.
Just a question about the law here. I'm not concerned with his theology.
I'm saying I think you're taking that verse out of context.
No, I'm only asking one question. About the law itself, the Torah, 613. I usually know it's 613 commandments. What happened to those 613 commandments according to Paul? Were they still in force? Were they abolished? Or what? What does it say?
It says that he abolished them in his flesh.
Abolished what?
The law and its commandments and regulations.
The law and its commandments and its regulations has been abolished. Right. Now, go back to what Jesus says in Matthew chapter 5, verse 17, and read what Jesus says about his attitude to the law. Remember, it's been abolished. The laws and regulations of the law have been abolished. So just remember that statement from the NIV.
And then you say Jesus.
Now, let's go back to Matthew chapter 5, verse 17.
I think you're misunderstanding.
Yeah. So I understand.
This is post Jesus. This is post the resurrection.
I couldn't agree with you more. So let's go back to Matthew now. Yeah, no, I'm just going to have to read it out because we can all be making this up. So you want evidence, so let's look at the evidence. Matthew 5:17. So Jesus has abolished the law and its regulations and its commandments. Now tell me what Jesus said.
You're reading that.
Now tell me what Jesus said.
He abolished the law and regulations in the flesh.
Thank you. Try to read out what Jesus said.
Yeah.
And not just one verse.
Do not think that I've come to abolish the law and the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth. Until heaven and earth disappear, the smallest letter, the least stroke of a pen will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks at least one of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches the commandments will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven.
So what was Jesus' attitude to the law? Did he say, like Paul in Ephesians chapter 2, verse 15, the law had been abolished? Or not?
He didn't. Here's another thing. Did he say, what do you think the Pharisees' opinion of the law was?
I'm interested in what the Pharisees.
I think it's very interesting.
I'm only interested in what Jesus taught here. According to Paul, Jesus, see, this is how we test a vision from God. So I've had a vision from God. I believe Jesus is telling me all sorts of interesting things. I go out and I tell them, I'm not going to talk to people who've known Jesus, who've met him, who've heard him preach for 3 years. No. I've got my own unique message, a vision I have. A skeptic, this gentleman comes along and says, hang on, I've heard Jesus preach Sermon on the Mount, that's what this is, and he said something else. He said the opposite. So this gentleman, and we read this in Galatians, he comes along to the Galatian church where Paul had been giving his own theology, his own understanding of Jesus, and he converts these Christians back to the message of Jesus that we've just read in Matthew's Gospel. Paul gets all upset, rightly so, because hey, he's always effort in, and now people who've known Jesus, know his message, are coming along and taking the Christians back to the teaching of Jesus. Paul gets very upset. He writes the book of Galatians, and you now have it in your hand 2,000 years later. Galatians. No, I mean Galatians, because in Galatians he has a battle with, an argument with people who, remember we go back to the only theology question he'll ask, okay, what was the difference between these other preachers of the gospel and Paul's understanding of the gospel? And that's what we're talking about, okay? So these were Jewish Christians who upheld the law, and they told these Galatians, look, if you want to be a follower of Jesus, you too got to follow the law, because Jesus said so in Matthew 5. Paul says, no, you don't, the law's been abolished.
He doesn't say, no, you don't.
Okay, in Galatians chapter 5, you know
what he says in Ephesians, you know what he's talking about by the abolishment. It says, by abolishing in his flesh the law that the commandment, the law with its commandments and regulations. And then he goes on to talk about the purpose was to create in himself one new man out of two, thus making peace. So Paul being a Pharisee, he was what Jesus is criticizing over here when he says you guys need to be more righteous than Pharisees. These Pharisees followed the law to its letter.
But Jesus says, notice in Matthew 5, if you do away with the smallest element of the law, say like the food laws, okay, you mustn't eat pork. A small element of the law, yeah, compared to the big 10 commandments about not committing murder, adultery, not stealing, not bearing false witness, and so on. Just a small thing about eating pork, okay? This is part of the 613 commandments of the law. Jesus says, if you disregard or disobey even the smallest element, jot or tittle, as it's called in Hebrew, for example, the food laws, you will be called the very least in the kingdom of heaven. So does Paul say you can eat pork in Romans? He does. Right. So why is Paul so at odds with the clear teaching of Jesus? James had a vision. I'm testing it against Jesus' teaching. In my view, he is found wanting. Acts, James says that there are certain restrictions upon what Gentiles can and cannot do. Okay, you're right. You don't have to obey all the 613 commandments, but they mustn't eat meat with blood in it. They mustn't eat blood. So it must be kosher or halal. It's the same. Essentially, I don't disagree. Essentially the same thing. The blood has to be taken out of the animal. So, for example, it's exactly the issue, because a kosher animal is one that's had the blood drained out. So a halal animal does a halal animal have blood in it? Chicken? Muslims? No, thank you. So essentially it's the same thing. Now, Paul taught in Romans and elsewhere that you can eat anything. He says in Romans 10, I think it is, all food is now clean for you. Now this contradicts everything. It contradicts Jesus' clear teaching. It contradicts James's teaching as well. So where did Paul get his authority from? I know, from a vision in heaven. And you can't gainsay that, can you? I mean, who can trump a vision from heaven? Except the apostles who can say, well, I actually knew Jesus. He actually taught the law. He's still binding him. In Galatians chapter 5, he says, if you live by the Spirit of God, you're not under the law. Yeah. He says in 1 Corinthians 6, he says, I am not under the law. And so on. But Jesus said the opposite. And at the very end of his life, you look at Matthew chapter 23, one of the last things he taught his disciples about the law. At the end of his life, in Matthew 23, verses 1, 2, and 3, just to restate for the final time what Jesus taught about the law for his disciples, for his followers. The beginning of the chapter. You're too kind. Then, says Matthew 23, then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So you must obey them and do everything they tell you. But do not do what they do, for they do not practice what they preach. Yeah? So the teachers of the law and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. So they teach the law, the 630 commandments. Do not eat pork, for example. What does Jesus say about these guys' teachings? You must obey them and do everything they tell you. No. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples. This is teaching his disciples and the crowds.
The Jews. They weren't Gentiles in the crowds. So he's telling the Jews and the disciples, you must continue.
Was Paul a Jew? Was Paul a Jew?
Yes, he was.
Paul was a Jew.
Absolutely.
Right. Paul was a Jew. To Paul, Jesus would have said, do whatever the people in Moses' seat tell you to do. Obey them, but don't do what they do to the hypocrites, to be crude. So Paul had no authority from Jesus to obey the law, to abolish the law, disturb the law, relax the law, or anything. According to most Jews, Paul was an apostate. He was an apostate from Judaism and guilty and worthy of death, which is why the Jews kept on trying to stone him when he went around the great Guru. Do you know those stories in Acts? The Jews are constantly trying to kill him because he's an apostate. So, but according to Jesus' own teaching, he was an apostate. So in fact, he should have been executed.